Welcome to the Rubber Onion Animation Podcast. We are fueled by an active community here, so if you want to participate, Rubber Onion is one word, I'm everywhere, and the hashtag is Rubber Onion Podcast. Use those and we'll see you. Everything else you can find on the website. I'm animator Stephen Brooks. I'm the Rubber Onion. My co-host is fellow animator Rob Yulfo. This is a Hot Cocoa Show. It's a topic episode. Let's do this.
I'm Don Bluth.
I'm Harry Partridge.
Hi, I'm Tom Moore, teenage superhero.
My name's Adam Phillips.
This is Robert Valley.
And I'm in no way doing a forced plug. No, sorry. I won't say that.
And you're listening to...
Good morning.
Oh, good morning,
Robbie.
Steve. I think you should change the maybe make a morning sound theme song version of the
morning-
Rubber Onion.
That one? Like
Yeah,
a
that
classic cartoon.
and then merge it with wait.
I just did. What?
But you don't really want a lullaby. No, you know what? Don't change anything. You need that boost to get up. So you need you need that kind of wake up.
Is that what you think this theme song sounds like?
Also,
Anyway,
I got to
just-
keep in mind, no one else is waking up this early to listen to this, so it doesn't make sense.
You don't know that.
That's true. Maybe we're the first people. We're the first people. Some
Maybe
people
we're
hear.
the first
We're the
first
people-
voices you hear in the morning.
Yeah,
Oh,
morning.
that's so sad.
That would be
Really, all you're hearing is you're just hearing crash test dummies. Once there was
a podcast.
I wake up early in the morning to record for you.
They posted 3 months.
It was a lot of audio to cut.
They talked about some subjects that no one.
And it was just cartoons. Okay, listen. I think some people know that song, but if you don't know that song, please just look up by the Crash Test Dummies, or literally just look up Crash Test Dummies. This is the only song that's going to come up.
There's a Weird Al parody of it.
Is there?
Yeah,
Can we talk about the Weird Al
I
movie?
didn't see it yet.
I saw the first 25 minutes and I desperately want to watch the rest of it. I thought it was really funny, the first 25 minutes that I saw. I was wondering what they were going to do with Daniel Radcliffe when he was playing the music, but it's just Weird Al's voice coming out of his face.
Oh, really?
I thought that was, I was like, perfect.
Is it UHS vibes?
Kind. It's a little bit more like
my
Dewey
Siri
Cox,
just went
I
off.
guess. I mean, I don't. What's that?
My series went off. I can't say
Your
it because
your Siri?
She's gonna pop
You
up.
mean your Siri started talking? Why?
Yeah,
What'd
because
you
I
do?
said, "Is it US Chess 5?" and she said, "Yeah." Mm-hmm.
Oh, okay.
It's like butt out.
She just wants to. She wants to be a part of it.
Yeah, she's a fan. Who would have known?
She's not a fan. She's she wants to be a co-host.
I mean, it's
Get out of here, Siri.
weird.
Well, okay.
How?
What are we talking about today? Should I just read the whole thing? So this is a Hot Cocoa episode. It is a topic we're going to talk about. So this is we're recording this. Do you want to say what time it is? 8:30 in the morning before work. So we're not going to go on and on and on, but I feel like an hour is pretty solid time to talk about this. The Hot Cocoa shows, we do these every once in a while for those of you who don't know or maybe are new. I would be surprised if people don't know what it is by this point, but it's just a topic. Rob and I used to get together for some hot cocoa. Some coffee, some hot cocoa, sit around, talk about career stuff. This is when Rob was not in animation as a career, but doing it as as a hobby, as a love, as an interest, and I was doing as a freelancer. And neither one of us went to school for animation, so we had a lot to talk about because we were kind of coming at it from different angles, and so there was just perspective and advice and that sort of thing. We just talked about animation. It's kind of the proto podcast, but for this show anyway. So we called it a Hot Cocoa Show because it's one of those topics that we just want to like dig into, and it's all centered around one thing. This one in particular, it came about from an old post. It was earlier this year. I had way back in April, I had asked what people wanted us to talk about, and Sean Harvey.
Did we have a nickname for him?
Jim?
Yeah, he gave himself
Liquid
a nickname.
Yeah. I was gonna say, do we like Sean PJ Harvey? I don't know, like what. Anyway, so Sean says, let me take a little sip of coffee here. Mm-hmm.
Oh, I'll do the same.
There you go. Could you talk about? I don't want to hear you sipping. That's grosser. Could you talk about doubts in this career path? I've had a bit of a career-related dilemma because I thought I'd hit some really good milestones recently. Basically, I've been animating frame by frame since my first animation battle, and I've only recently found out about rigging and the fact that it's a whole new skill set required for industry. Also, I've been using Animate for years rather than Toon Boom. These two revelations have really disheartened me from this career path, and I was wondering if you guys had any advice. I've debated pursuing illustration for a while to improve on my drawing fundamentals and see if the spark comes back. Have you guys hit any blocks like this? Do you have any tips about what would make the mountainous stuff we need to learn as animators a little less overwhelming? Asking for a friend, winky face.
Oh man, that friend. He's a good friend for looking out for his friend.
He's a good friend.
Reaching out to us.
Exactly.
Two friends. Yeah, I would say
one podcast. I think we said that before. Did you want to jump in and say something, or do you want me to kick it off?
Oh no, you can kick it off.
Okay, I mean, this is there's a couple things to unpack in here, which I think we could probably go over in order. But the first thing is he's talking. Well, let's say three things really. He's talking general doubts. Let's just say there's always going to be doubts in any career path that you take. That's just part of life, I think. The second one is the style. He's talking about frame by frame animation and rigging. Rigging in itself is kind of part of a type of digital animation, and you can do CG rigging, you can do 2D rigging. I'm going to sneeze.
Gesundheit. You almost dabbed a little.
Well, that's you're supposed to sneeze into your
it was half a
elbow
dab. You
pit.
Just didn't put the other arm up.
A little dab will do you. Well, that made me sound even older. Okay. We're really going to give advice, I promise. You got frame by frame animation, you got rigging, you got rigged animations. These are two types of animation, but if you don't necessarily have to rig your own stuff in order to do rigged animation, you just have to know how to use a rig. So I think there's something to be talked about in the types of things that we need to learn. But fair point. There are different ways to do animation, and we go in waves of what is, and also where you are, what shops are around you, what kind of jobs you're getting through freelance. That's all going to be stuff that is going to influence the type of animation that you're doing, or that you're pulled for, because the motivation at that point is not really always artistic, it's economic, right? You're going to where the jobs are. And then the last thing is the software itself, saying, well, I've been using Animate for years and I haven't been using Toon Boom. And that kind of speaks to a larger thing, which is that a lot of studios are using Toon Boom. There are a lot of studios that are using Animate, but it's really more, Titmouse uses Animate. Other studios in New York use Animate. It's not something that is used by the wider animation studio marketplace, so to speak. So I think there's three general things. There's just doubts. There's type of, the things that you have to learn or feel like you have to learn. And then there's the type of animation, and then there's the software that you're using or the software that you might have to use. Is that enough to kick it off?
Yeah, I think so. You have to have also just kind of like a general interest in it, and not sometimes always think about, how is this going to get me into this career? Because sometimes, a lot of the jobs that you get is built around your strengths, like if they reach out to you for something about that you're really good at. But it just helps to learn other programs. Going into a lot of the stuff when, Steven told me about the gig for Cartoon President, I went in there not knowing character animator at all, and After Effects as well, which was like the two main things that they use there. And I talked about before how like After Effects was always the thing that I've looked at and admired people who knew how to do it, and I always compared it to like cleaning a hoarder's house, where it's just like, where do I even start? When Steven showed me After Effects and he opened up all the layers, I was just like, what is this? It was, hey, can you land this plane? You ever seen like the cockpit of a
Well, that was I was gonna say that was my analogy, and that was my analogy to you.
Oh, was it?
When yeah, was that whenever I open up After Effects, I looked at it and I was like, this is like a cockpit. There's just knobs and dials everywhere, and I'm sure that like, how there's a thing like you could probably take off. You could probably fly a plane. You're not going to land a plane. And that's kind of where it felt like, you could learn probably in the beginning enough stuff to get you there, but it's not going to be enough to take it the rest of the way. And when I showed you like an After Effects project that was already done, obviously you're seeing all the layers and you're seeing all the keyframes and everything. And this morning voice.
Are you not Barry White?
Once there was this boy.
Oh, when he covered that, I was just like, whoa, what a crossover. You're good enough for your love, baby. All right, we got to make that mashup now.
Can't get enough of your love, baby.
I think we're starting to split off into the software stuff. So let's at least say that yes, for After Effects, when you saw it and it was really complicated, it can be a little daunting. I know that when I opened it up, I looked at it and I was like, no, I can't use it. I understand that people use this for things. I can't use this. The only thing that I used was Animate, back when it was Flash, and that was it. But before I even started, before that, I started in hand-drawn animation. I was doing that myself. And then when I got Flash, I had to learn how to use symbols because I didn't have a graphics tablet or anything to draw into the computer. So what I did was I actually drew on paper. I got a scanner. I scanned it. I brought that bitmap into, which I don't even think I've seen that extension anymore. Are bitmaps, do they even exist? Anyway, I brought the bitmap into Flash. And then I used shapes to make the design. So I had the design, and then I would use shapes of and create new vector points and kind of move them around in order to make this new design, and then make symbols out of that. And then it became symbol animation. But it was this big path because I needed a way in, and my way in was I needed to draw because I couldn't create things just on the computer without drawing it first. I had to draw it first and then bring it in. And I kind of from there knew the animation that I wanted to do, the movement that I wanted to do. I would usually act it out, reference. Obviously, it's, very basic stuff. Yeah. Then I got the Intuos and I started drawing. And then I got a Cintiq and my drawing got better. on the computer, but it was all a path toward basically the same thing. It was just a means to an end. What was the thing that I needed to do? So I think part of his problem is that he's looking at it in terms of like, these are the things that I have to learn in order to have a career in animation, and it's fighting against the thing that he likes to do. He likes to do frame by frame animation. That's what he wants to do. That's what he feels comfortable doing. He used Animate in order to do it, and he's looking at the opportunities that are around him for work, I would assume, and saying everyone's hiring for Toon Boom. And everyone is hiring for these Toon Boom jobs, which are all rigged animation stuff. And I don't know how to use rigs. I'll just say that the whole point of rigs are that they're pretty user friendly. It's not really very hard to use a rigged. Once it's already rigged, it's not very hard to use it. And most jobs will show you, this is how you use the rig. This is this stuff that's special in the rig. Most jobs will just show you like, this is it. And as long as you know the basics of how to use a rig for animation, you can do that. And I'm sure that I use frame by frame. I use hand-drawn animation to rough things out all the time. And then I will go back to whatever rig I have to see if I can, what's the closest I can do to get to that rough that I animated. So I find my own way in, and I do that with After Effects as well. I'll block things out. So it's kind of like I'm doing halfway between a storyboard animatic and a rough, kind of like merging the ideas. Just whatever I want to do to this is the end result. I sketch it out, sketchbook style, and then I see what I need to do, knowing the program in order to recreate that. So I think there's ways in for you, even if that's a thing that you like to do. But ultimately, if you want to get a job somewhere and they're hiring for something, you have to learn that thing. But it's not as big of a deal as I think people are worried about. Both of us. I got that job. I didn't know anything about After Effects before our cartoon president. When I got that job, I learned it. I learned on the fly. I learned as much as I could over the weekend. And James T, Nethery Regions, shout out. Got on a call with him and talked about After Effects and the various things that were needed in order to like do basic stuff, because I figured I just need to know how to do basic things, and I learned as much as I could over the weekend. And then I went in and did animation, and I asked people that were sitting next to me, how do I do this? They were very helpful. It's simple as that. It's not all that. Rob, you're not great at learning new programs. How long did it take you to learn that?
I think maybe a few days or something.
Right. Crazy.
Yeah,
it's crazy to think that. Can you imagine how much would it take you to learn that program by yourself?
Oh, yeah, it would just be, because it's weird. Because sometimes you look at tutorials and they're like, well, all you have to do is press this button and it's all set. Like and subscribe. And you're like, I don't have that button. It's just right. So sometimes you just have to do a lot of trial and error. But it's good to just reach out to someone who knows it. That's one of the things. Don't be afraid to like say, hey, I'm having. Don't be afraid to sound dumb. Where you're just like, I do that a lot, where it's just like, I can't let anyone figure it out, but they usually figure it out very easily. But then you just kind of like reach out. I remember when I first got, even till this recent job now, I did my first lower third and I panicked. Oh, actually, the first thing I had to do was something that was cut. But it's just, I forgot how to even just animate in general. I was just like, I don't know. I have to make anonymous. Oh God,
Among Us. Among Us. I remember that. You sent me it was you did it in Flash, right?
Yeah. Which they didn't really. No one used Flash there, and I kind of introduced it to the show. But I remember just kind of panicking, and then just trying to slowly figure things out. And I think it was pretty much that night of doing the lower third on After Effects where I kind of knew these things, but just getting to build things yourself and seeing it from that perspective, you just kind of quickly pick up on stuff, And
Yeah,
I'm saying
having a
this for
goal,
someone
having a
who-
thing that you're going to do is also really important, and having people around you that kind of know how you would. It's like a gut check. You just go, "This is how I'm thinking about doing. This is how," and someone can look at it and go, "Oh, there's an easier way to do that." But I mean, what you're doing will work.
Yeah, a lot of times you know what you're doing, but you doubt yourself, and that feeling of just seeing it and being overwhelming. It's what I coined Pee Wee Herman snakes. Remember we used to say that?
Yeah.
That
Just keep
scene in
running
Pee
by.
Wee's Big Adventure where he just knows he has to deal with he has to deal with those snakes to get it out of this burning pet shop, but he's just gonna come back to that, and that's what happens, and you just wind up not doing it. I think one of the things like growing up was like seeing such a variety of animation. I accidentally fell into the whole evolution of animation, trying to find out what was the easiest way to animate. Because I'm telling you now, if we still had to hand draw things on paper and use cells and paint, and I know not one person did all that, but even with independent stuff, I don't think I would have been able to continue this interest in animation because it just seems like such an overwhelming thing. But it would be interesting to kind of do like an old school thing like that, So it's all about.
So it's a general. Yeah, it's a general love of animation. It's a general thing that you're drawn to, and I think that as long as you have that, you can weather the storm. There are things that can bring you down. There are things that can pull you down, and one of the things is feeling like all this effort that I put into learning this one thing is useless because this other job that I have is not going to use that. They're using this other program or a different style of animation or something like that. And the good thing about animation is there's so much crossover, especially if your skill is hand-drawn animation. I think that's one of the things when you're talking about the evolution of animation. One of the great things about hand-drawn animation is that because it's so old and so established, new forms of animation use it as a building block. Use the principles and the ideas and the things as a way to jump to other things. So if you're doing stop motion, there's different things you have to learn, but there is a method in frame by frame animation, straight ahead animation. You get the concept, you get the idea, similarly as you would for, stop motion. You're going to have to do straight ahead animation. You can't really do post pose because you can't go back because you're changing the puppet as you go. So there's the concept crosses over, and then you have, strong posing, or you have anticipation, you have these other principles that will carry over to CG or the rigged animation. If you're worried about Toon Boom, for instance, like Toon Boom is something I'll dabble in every now and then. But the good thing about Toon Boom is it's very similar to Flash in the way that you can use symbols to like move things around and do stuff. But when you need to break out of that and you need to do hand-drawn things, you can do that. You can kind of like swap it out and then swap it back, and that's, I think it's a path toward creation. So if I would say that on the first mile marker here on our way, if you know for sure you do not want to do anything other than frame by frame animation, and that's it, that's the thing you want to, and you do not need to pursue any other jobs other than that for life and money and things, then great. That's what you want to do. Then you're going to have to probably create your own jobs, your own place. You're going to have to find an opportunity for you to do work either at a studio or independently. There's a lot of independent stuff that you can do. You'd have to make a name for yourself in your own style, but at least you know what you want to do. I know that I have no doubt. I've done some stuff in CG before. I've learned it just because I want to know, I had to move some things around. I had to, we were talking about flying a camera around. Like I know how to move a camera. I know how to do some basic stuff. And it was really just as an introductory thing. I just know that that's not what I want to do. But if that's where my career takes me, I'm okay going down that road. But if I have a choice, if I have a choice of 2 projects I'm going to work on, I'll probably choose the one that is more interesting and or pays better, has better career prospects, because at its core, what I'm really looking to do is I'm looking to, use animation, use movement to tell stories. That's just what it is. I just like the aesthetic of hand-drawn stuff, and it's what I'm more familiar with. Even though my current job that I'm doing, it is based on quote hand-drawn things, and there is hand-drawn elements, but primarily the stuff that you see on the show is done through a digital method by moving things around and triggering a prefab animation to happen at a certain time. And then there's special bits of animation that you put on top of one another, and there's compositing. So it's kind of anime, but that's I think what you want to know. What do you want to do? Do you and then open yourself up to, okay, what will I do? Because those are 2 completely different questions to ask yourself. This is what I want to do, but this is what I will do if it means being in this career. So let's put that one aside and say the next part, which is, programs just in general. I think we talked about After Effects is really complicated. If you have to learn Toon Boom, I'm sure that you probably look at it in a similar way. It's very complicated. But if you get a job, it's not super hard to learn a program in order to do that job, because you have a very particular thing that you need to do, and other people who are using it for that method. I think people get worried about learning a new program when they're thinking about having to learn it themselves or for an independent thing. If I get hired as an independent animator, as a freelance animator, to do a job all by myself, and they say use Toon Boom, then yeah, that's very daunting, because I'm going to have to figure out not only all the things that are going to go into this project, the boards, conceptual, whatever. I know how long that will take in Flash. I have no idea how long that will take in Toon Boom. Also, I'm going to have to learn it and whatever. But when you're on a job, more often than not, they will either they'll teach you, or they'll teach you their way, right? So all you need to do is you need to know the basics, and you can learn the basics just by looking at tutorials, following along, just to get something that looks kind of good on your reel, and then tell them that you know how to use the program. Then once you're in the job, you just work really hard in the beginning. And I think that's most jobs. You don't need to give 100%. You shouldn't give 100% all the time, because it gives you nowhere to go. It's like exercising. You shouldn't be a full out sprint all the time. Like, even when you're trying to exercise at the height of your ability, like when you're really, really pushing it, you're talking like 75%. You're not talking 100%. That will raise your heart rate and everything. I think 75% is like, that's a really, really dedicated, pushed person.
That's why I never go there.
Go there meaning
75%. I usually keep
75%. Oh yes,
I usually keep it at just one sit up when I get out of bed.
Well, that's the thing, is that how much effort you put into something. That's a great equalizer as well. Like in the beginning, if you don't really know a bunch of stuff, if you put in a lot more effort, that will help you out a little bit. You'll speed up a little bit.
Yeah.
You don't need to walk at the same pace as everyone else. If people are ahead of you, you can just jog to catch up. And then once you're there, you slow down to the pace that everyone else is going. A nice steady career pace.
Yeah.
But you're always going to be learning things. You have to learn things, because yes, the career will change. And the only way that you can lock yourself into one program and one style is one of 2 things. Either you create all those opportunities for yourself, aka you're someone whose style and established, indie cred allows you to just do the thing that you want to do forever, right? So like Bill Plimpton, you look at a Bill Plimpton thing. I was watching the new season of Simpsons, and I saw another Bill Plimpton couch gag. As soon as it pops up, I'm like, there's Bill Plimpton. That's his style. That's what he does. You can see it in literally everything he does. And so he gets to make his own, choices of the style that he works in, the way that he works, because, he's created that for himself. The other one is you need to be in a place that has an enormous amount of jobs for your particular skill set or desired end career. That's why people move to LA, because there's just so many jobs there, and all the jobs are just like, come in, sit down, here's your task, do your task. You could like literally just do like I was talking about this recently with someone that, in New York, but also in a lot of other places, you get hired as background designer and you make a background, right? So it's like, here's the thing. Great. You draw it, you paint it, you light it, you do a whole thing, and then you send it in. There you go. There's your background. But primarily in LA, if you're hired, there's like background artist, background painter. Someone will design like the layout, right? So you can like design the backgrounds, the props, all that sort of thing in like line drawing. And then there's a painter that will actually like render this stuff all out in color. And sometimes there's a colorist that chooses the palette. That there are like subcategories of jobs, and you can really, really super micro focus on a particular skill set that you have in an industry that's been established over like 60 some odd years or something like that. Probably more than that, but I think like in LA, I think it's probably 60 years for what we're looking at in terms of animation. And that's your other option. Create it for yourself or go to a place that has a bunch of jobs. If you're just talking about living in a spot that has some animation jobs around, or you're trying to get freelance things, then you're going to have to learn some new stuff to get hired in a job that has a pipeline, because then you're going to work in that pipeline. But if you're just doing independent freelance stuff, usually it doesn't matter. It's just like they don't really care. They just will hire you to do a job.
That was always kind of my way about it. Like I was always just kind of, there was a frustration whenever I thought of other programs, and it was just like, oh, have you ever tried this? No. I'm sticking to animate and
well, you know how long it's going to take you to do something. In freelance, it's really important. Someone says like, I got this 1 minute thing. Can you do it? And because you've used this program, you know how much, you have an idea about how you're going to tackle it. And you go like, I know how long that's going to take me. Here's how much it's going to cost. Right. But if you're using a new program, or they say, can you do this in Toon Boom Animate? Well, now you have to factor in learning it and being comfortable with it and things like that. But normally, if they're hiring just you to do a job, that's it. I mean, if you want to get a job in a studio, that's a little bit easier, I think, because you just learn enough to get into the studio, and then they show you the rest of the way.
And it actually helps, because like I had no intentions of doing this. I was just going to do independent stuff, and I could be the next Bill Plimpton, where people just like my stuff. That didn't work out so well, but me doing my own stuff, posting stuff on YouTube, got attention from studios and from things where I got the job for Trip Tank. They saw my work on YouTube. And even like submitting stuff to Animation Block Party and stuff like that. And, then I kind of had to like realize, oh, I do have to kind of teach myself other stuff. And you find that even being not forced, but like being told you have to learn another program under that pressure kind of helps, because now, even with my independent stuff, you find that the other programs that you work with complements what you're already doing, So now I just,
we were talking yesterday, and you said like, you can't even imagine, you can't even imagine a time making an animated short without After Effects.
Now I draw everything on Animate. I leave everything on a loop on one layer, and then I just throw them in After Effects, and I move everything around in After Effects now, which is lazy, but but it helps me out a lot as far as like structuring things. There's freelance that I'm doing now that I'm getting done a lot quicker because I already know how to structure it, because I'm not a person that does storyboarding and goes over like the too much rough animation stuff like that. And now because of this this knowledge that I have of After Effects, I can go about things a lot faster. Even with Character Animator, it does stuff where I forget sometimes. If you have a character who has a feather coming out of his hat and you're moving him around, my strength isn't really Disney style animation where everything's alive. A piece of fabric like a scarf is moving with him. And with Character Animator, you have that dangle effect that I use for every single thing now. If I can have a dangle effect on an eyelash, I would put them on every eyelash of the character. Because
it's so funny because you could actually create, if you know that, and you can actually create a design of a character that has, you go like, I need something. I need something to create a dangle. Like you can, if you know that you're going to use that, anytime you create a character, just like have a ponytail or have a scarf or have like something that's hanging off of them, and put that dangle on there, and you're like, there it is. There's my dangle, and it gets a little extra movement in there.
Yeah, it feels like I'm closer to a Disney animator as I ever been, because.
Which is so funny because I feel like doing that is further away from being Disney animator. But in essence, that's the great thing about Dangle. If you don't know Dangle, obviously you put this point on it, and then Character Animator recognizes that it's a point that essentially what it does is it computes overlapping action. Which I want to say, I feel like every time I bring this up, I have to clarify because I really want people to know, because I get really annoyed whenever people go like, oh, that's some good secondary action. Like, what you mean is overlapping action. Overlapping action is the unconscious movement of something, like if you turn real quick and the hair whips around. That's overlapping action. The action is overlapping the main one. Secondary action is something that is either conscious or subconscious. And in my book, Traditional Animate CC, 12 Principles of Animation, Adobe Animate, my example was if you have a character who's talking and he's delivering line. This is like the main action. Maybe he's talking, maybe he's walking, maybe he stands up, whatever. But he's also like peeling an apple, that's a secondary action. It's a second thing that he's doing. You understand what I'm saying? Like, where
it's like a drummer drumming and his feet are doing the double bass movement.
Sure, it could be that, but there's a main action that you're doing, and then the secondary action is something else. And there are also, the secondary action sometimes can help in your the storytelling of a character, where the character might be doing one thing, but then subconsciously they're doing something else, like they're holding something behind their back, or they're like, they are trying to be really confident, but then their foot is shaking. That's a secondary action. That's something that is being done subconsciously or physically, but it's not something that comes from the physics of moving. You have a trench coat and you're running, and the trench coat is like waving behind you in the wind. That's an overlapping action. You stop and the action keeps going. That overlaps on top of the action. Your one action stops, the other one overlaps on top of it. So anyway, that's what Dangle does. It gives you overlapping action. You just kind of put that little point on it, and boom, you got one of the principles of animation right there. So there you go. I can see why you're closer to Disney, because because of this one thing. You just point it in there.
Yeah. And he's rolling in his grave.
Frank and Ollie would be very, very happy. But it's true, you learn this stuff, and it's really just, I feel like that is kind of the core of being an animator in general. There are two different sides that you can take from it. There are people that I feel like they get into animation because they love animation, they love visual storytelling, and that's what they want to do. And they, you get really interested in certain ways of doing it, and so you're drawn either by talent or opportunity or just straight up interest. Like you could just be like the most talented basketball player in the world, but you just really want to play soccer and you suck at soccer. But like, that's where your interest is. You hate basketball, but you really love soccer. What are you going to do? Are you going to play basketball? Oh, baseball. Yeah. yeah. I mean, that's not a bad example, but which way are you going to go? Are you going to do the thing that you're good at, or are you going to do the thing that you really love to do? But then the other side of it is, let's say there's just a lot more soccer jobs than there are basketball jobs. Ridiculous. But let's just say that is speaking as an American. But let's just say that's
right now. So
I know. So then now what do you take? Now you're going to take the one, let's say you do like basketball more, but there's so many more jobs in soccer. Are you okay with that? Are you okay with taking that job, taking that role? Basketball in this case also might be, maybe you could be in a town, or you could be in a certain industry where you could really stand out. You might not like it all that much, but you're going to be valued in a way that you're not going to be in this other place. There's a lot of factors that go into it. You just have to be honest about what is the thing that you want to do.
Well, with that analogy,
what's valuable to you
of finding your strength in the industry. Mm-hmm. Let's keep going with the basketball theory. If you're good at defense and you're going into soccer, I'd imagine they'll put you as a goalie, and you'll probably be good at that in soccer.
Sure, that stretch analogy, you're using your talents, you're using your physical attributes in order to help you in a similar type role, or at least a role in this other thing that uses those similar attributes in a certain way. Yeah. Sure, that's the same kind of idea. It's really more about, you just have to be aware of yourself, and I think that's what all career doubts and ideas kind of come down to, is just take a breather, take a moment, and go like, what do I want to do? Not what do I want to do, but like, what do I want to do? Be real specific about it. Don't say like, I just really want to draw. Okay, I guess that's general, but do you want a career in animation? Is that a specific goal? If you didn't have a career in animation, you just started working somewhere else, would you be fine with that? Do you want to, specifically, do you want to be involved in like the storytelling aspect, or do you just want to be, a conscious pencil? Do you just want to be something that helps other people tell a story? Do you want to be an artist? How do you want to be valued? And where are your strengths? What do you think your strengths are? Are your strengths specifically in drawing? He was talking about like, illustration and learning illustration and getting better at that. I think you should always pursue things that you either are your strengths to keep them up, or they're your weaknesses to make them, a bit better. I remember talking to Adam Phillips in our interview, and he said that he just took a year and was just drawing hands. Yeah. And it was also when his hand was like injured in a factory accident. But I took that same idea and I did the same thing. Like very soon after that, I was like, yeah, I should draw hands. And so I just started drawing hands. Turns out I can draw my hand very well. I didn't realize that not everyone has my stupid hand. I kind of say I have like Milt Kahl fingers, like the one, that just kind of like end in a square. But they're not long and bony like that. They just don't taper. They just kind of go up and then they just end in a square. So I got very good at drawing my hands, but not other people's hands. So then I had to go around a hole, and it was like, okay, well, how do I do tapered hands now, tapered fingers? And that was a pursuit that I did. And sure, I guess I use it, but I don't really use it specifically. Like, it was just something that I did. And I think it does help me, from time to time. You just got to know like what you want to pursue and what you want to get out of animation. If you're looking for a career where you're going to be given assignments that, speak to exactly what you do perfectly well, you're going to have to either go to a place and get hired at a job that is very, very big. You're going to have to be like at a Disney or a DreamWorks or something like that, where you get to do this one very specific job, or a place like LA where most of the animation is not actually done in LA. It's all planned in LA and then animated elsewhere. So like you can do pre-production stuff there, or go to another place and get involved in like the design packs. Like if he wants to get into design, then you can go to a studio and that will be part of an animation studio that gives to the production studio a design pack during pre-production. Like, here's all your designs, here are all the turnarounds, here's all the model sheets and everything. There you go. You had talked a little bit earlier before we were recording about like being around other people, like hanging out in groups and stuff. And you mentioned about how you started with independent animation and you were sending your stuff to animation festivals and you were throwing it up on YouTube, and there's a social aspect that like pulls this all together sometimes.
Yeah, I was at some point, I mean, I was working at the same job for 13 years. And it wasn't a job that I was just kind of, it was for like the president of Brooklyn. I don't know. It sounds like a fictional job, but like everyone working there was using it as a stepping stone into politics. And I'm like the least political person to be working in this job. So I was just kind of there because I just kind of found myself there because I was doing a lot of like filmmaking stuff and all that. So we were starting off doing press conferences and all that. But I always had this interest in animation still. And there was a kind of a hopes that, I'll make money there and use my independent animation to kind of find me work doing, what I really want. But I didn't necessarily know that I wanted to work for an industry. I didn't know what the art was going to be. I would always say I'm an animator first before I said I was what my real job was. And I hung out in the animation scene, and I was compared to kind of like comedy clubs. There's always comedians who are doing other jobs, but they hang out with other comedians who got picked up for a pilot. I'm sure there are people hanging out with Raymond, who everyone loves, I heard. And because I kind of started also in that time where Newgrounds was big and YouTube was just starting up. And I always kind of thought of myself as that comedian who's still in the scene with people that are, a lot more successful with their animation, but I'm still doing my stuff, but I have my day job. And there is some like resentment a little bit for that. But then there's also the thing of like, I actually can have an idea and just put it out there without people saying, oh, this is nothing like what you used to do or something like, Oh, but on the subject of hanging out with people that do this, it feels good. It feels good. Like having a night where you're just talking to other animators about stuff that you love, kind of, and then especially when the work that you worked on, they compliment it. Oh man, one of the best compliments I ever got was from Emmett Goodman. He said, your work's kind of punk rock. And I was like, oh, thanks, Ed. He was like, yeah, you just put it out there. That's it. And he's someone that is a great animator and, worked in some industry stuff. And this is when I was just miserable at my job. And I'm just hanging out with the animators. And I remember when we went to the premiere party for when you started working at Cartoon President, that's when I was just like, oh yeah, this is nice. This is like hanging out with enemies, and you're all, if you're miserable at your, working on making Donald Trump move, it's still fun because you're all animators working on this project,
It can be. I think not everyone sees that, or not everyone gets that, because you can go in waves of things that you like and things that you don't like, or especially when you start taking something for granted, when it's just, okay, this is the thing that I've been doing for a while, and now I don't really like this anymore, because you don't really see what you used to have value in before. Like, you could start a job and you could be really excited about it, and then you're in it for a little bit, and then that kind of dissipates, and all you're left with is the idea that this is just a job. And you do have to change your perspective a little bit when that happens, of, okay, now I'm not getting the same things out of this that I once was. There's not the excitement. I think that's why a lot of people will move from place to place, even though in New York, this is such a gig economy. You're always moving around from one thing to another. But it's a similar thing for independent animation, for freelance animation, and maybe less so in LA. People go to LA for like a stable job. They just kind of go to a place, and then that's the place that they work. But they still jump around from studio to studio, usually based on projects. But if you're not getting that, if you're feeling like this is just a job and I'm not getting the thing that I used to get out of it, try not to compare it to your own independent stuff or your learning, right? Because it's a different world. When you are a different world, every time I say that, I hear it in my head. When you are pursuing something that you really want to do, there is that excitement there. And if you're first learning animation, you first jump into it. That's why every time that we talked about freelance, I say you got to get while the getting's good in freelance, and you got to try to get as far as you possibly can, because if you lose that energy and that patience before you've made it to a place where you can kind of not coast, but you can kind of, keep the momentum going, you're frankly not going to make it. It's just not going to happen, because you don't really get that back. You don't get that after that point. Your effort and your energy is just going to be so overwhelming. It can push you into a place that does feel like now you're verging on something you need to talk to a therapist for, where you got into this thing because you love it, and now you don't really love it anymore. And what you're left with is the realities of making money and doing a job that requires the same talent and the same skill of the thing that you used to like. So if you're taking away that, you're doing a thing where you have to work, and you also are using the thing that you used to love, and now you're recognizing that you don't really love it right now, that combination of stuff is what makes people go, I don't want to do this anymore. And that's where I was a few years ago. I don't know if I've said this explicitly on the podcast. I think I probably talked about it at lunchtime. You and I definitely talked about it. But I was at a point where I was at a crossroads for me, and I was trying to, I always have a 5-year plan. At some point we'll talk about how that kind of changes. I just thought, yeah, you just have a direction, you kind of go in it, and then you feel your way through your career. That's a much bigger conversation to have. But I was at the end of one of my things. I had met some sort of goal, and I was going, okay, so now I'm at the end of this. I'm trying to see where the next path is. And I was really trying to make that next path. And I had 2 options, and neither one of them was really panning out the way that I was hoping. And I was really, really losing motivation and interest in everything. And I was kind of facing the idea that, okay, I'm working in this thing. I'm doing this thing now. I love animation. I love storytelling. I love visual storytelling. I love using my creativity and whatever talent might be swishing around in here to do something, make a product that is either someone will appreciate, someone can use, or for me. And when I was faced with the idea that where I am right now, this is where I stay. And I'm not really going to go outside of that realm. I kind of took a bird's eye view of where I was, and I go, I don't think this is what I want. I don't think this is where I want to stay. This is not what I want to do. And it made me really question whether or not I actually wanted to continue on in animation. Not because I didn't love animation, and not because I didn't love the career, I guess, that I had, the opportunities and everything that I had up to that point. It was just, I could not see a path forward to a place that was a camping ground that I actually wanted to like set up shop. I was still on unstable ground, and I knew that I didn't want to stay there. And if you don't want to stay there and you don't have a clear path ahead of you, it can become very daunting to pick a direction and walk in that, because you could just end up in another place that you don't want to be. And the way that I got through that was really kind of dumb luck. I had an opportunity. I just didn't close off opportunities, but I did let people know I'm up for things. And I gave myself some time. I gave myself an actual cutoff time and said, if I don't see a path forward by this time, I'm going to have to start looking at other options. And it just so happened that an opportunity fell in my lap that I was interested in pursuing, in just as a path. Like, maybe that wasn't going to be a thing that I was going to do, but I, kind of walked down that path, and it ended up working out well for me. It ended up being something that actually is something that I like for my career. But if you're really at that kind of crossroads and it's really that serious, that's what we were talking earlier about, really knowing what you want to do for a career going forward. You have to know that about yourself and know, am I really at a crossroads, or am I just kind of bored? Do I just kind of not like this? Because if all you're talking about is learning different programs, it's not that big of a deal. But if you're talking about feeling like what you want out of animation is not what the career is, and you can't make that for yourself, you can't do independent stuff, you can't do freelance stuff, you're just not getting those jobs there, I would say, one, you gotta get out there and find a community, talk to people in your area, surrounding your area, whatever, and try to tell them what you want. People will help you out.
Yeah.
This is what I want to do. This is the type of animation I want to do. People will go like, oh, I had a job come across my desk that I can't do. Pass this on to you. That is literally what happened to me a couple times in my career that created different paths in my career. People said, I don't have the time to do this. Would you like to do this? And I went, yeah, this fits with something that I might want to do. And you take that opportunity and you run with it. It at least gives you a direction to go in. I would say that if you get an opportunity to get a job that will teach you or that will motivate you to learn something like Toon Boom, do that. Take that opportunity, learn that program, then you'll know if this is something that you want to do or not. Because right now it's just more about, well, where you were and where I was, looking at something like After Effects and going, no, I don't want to fly a plane. I just want to I can ride a bike, and that's about as much movement as I can do. But you get a job that requires you to learn this sort of thing, and you have a safety net of people that you're working with and tutorials that are on servers and things like that. And you are able to use it as a means to an end, and through that path, you'll figure out if this is something that you want to do. Just please understand that if you just are genuinely unhappy in the career, like, I don't really want to be doing this thing, just take a step back and look at, are you really unhappy, or is this just a realization that you're coming up to, and that there are just a lot of things about animation that you weren't ready for? Do you really not want to go down that road? Or is this just something that's like hard for you to absorb at the time? Take some time, take an opportunity, and see if that's what you want to do before completely throwing it away. Or getting past that, I think, is just try to take an opportunity to learn it. Don't try to motivate yourself to learn a new program because you think it's good for your career. Try to learn as much as you can to get a job. Find a job that uses that thing. If you think this is what I want to do, get a job that's like that, and then learn it on the site.
It's almost like the opposite of cold turkey because
Well, it's jumping in head first, right? It's 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 diving in the deep end, you know. Yeah. But in this case, it's not like, you know, I would say that if you dive in the deep end, that's you doing it by yourself. But if you dive in the deep end and there's people around, you know, they can help you. They're not, they're not going to
when Steven
you're not going to drown.
When Steven got his job, I was still working at Borough Hall, and I saw the overlapping action of his coattails, and I grabbed on for dear life and said, "Take me with you." No, that was like the following year or something like that. But it took a lot of convincing. Steven was just like, you know, one of the major things was, you know, and this is a whole other subject. I had healthcare. I had a whole pension plan that I abandoned. And then I remember telling somebody, yeah, I left, I had healthcare, pension plan, and all that stuff, but now I'm an animator. I have none of those things now. And they was like, what did you do? But I knew it was, oh my God, I can't even get started with my dad's reaction. It was just like, it was like I was going to be a doctor. And then I just said, I'm going to be a mime now, a mime in New York.
But that's exactly what being an anime. I mean, it was the same for me. I was, you know, I majored in chemistry. It's exactly the same idea. Going into a creative job like this, it's not, you don't, at this point in time in the career of animation in the world, there are some places that are really, like I said, LA, you know, some places that are just really, really established. And these are what, you know, these are like what you call career towns. You know, New York could be a career town, but right now it's a very gig town. You know, you get a job here, you get a job here, you get a job here, and that's kind of the way that it is. And most places are like that. Like most places in the world are like that for animation, especially if you're doing freelance stuff. Then yeah, I mean, most of what you're going to get through freelance is just going to be, I get this job here for this short amount of time. And I've talked at length about being a freelance animator, and having to do it all yourself. You got to learn a whole bunch of stuff for animation, storyboarding and design. And, you know, you got to learn about story, and you got to learn about animation and color theory and all that sort of stuff. You have to learn about all these things if you're going to be an independent animator, even if you're on your pursuit to being an animator. If all you want to do is you just want to be a supervising animator that just does keys for characters, or it just plans something out, you could do that. That's what you could end up doing, but you have to learn the other stuff on the way. But for us that came at it from a trade side of things, like learned it on our own, it is a bit more like you're not going through that career. You have to learn, you have to pick the things that you want to learn specifically. I want to learn this, so I'm going to learn this. I want to learn this program, so I'm going to learn this program, or I'm going to learn this type of thing. He's talking about getting into illustration, or, you know, re-pursuing, I guess, illustration to get better at drawing. That's a great pursuit. Shift things up. But what you're talking about is you're talking about individual pursuit. My advice is to find a job that will motivate you to do something that you would normally have to motivate yourself to do. And that's what I mean. If you're talking about program, if you're talking about like rigging or rigged animation, you know, you can hire people to do rigging. If you get a job and they say, we want you to animate this, we want you to rig up this character and animate this character, great. You can then take that and you can hire someone to rig this character, and you can animate that character. You could do that. You don't have to take all the money for yourself. You just need to use it as a way of doing something. Something that I would advise you to do: design a character. You're doing your illustration. Find someone on the internet. Find someone on Fiverr. Find someone who does rigging professionally. There's a lot of people who do independent rigging. Send them your design and have them rig it. You might be able to pay them a little bit extra to say, record your screen while you're doing it. Want a little bit of a tutorial, something like that. You can then take that rig and just break it apart. Just start ripping it apart and just start looking at how they rigged this character. And now you have a rigged character all for yourself. and then start using that rigged character to animate, to do something. There's a ton of tutorials. Animating an already rigged character is a lot easier than rigging a character from the ground up, but just start animating that character and put it into your reel. Now, boom, there you go. You've now animated a character that is rigged in a particular program. You might be able to get a job. That's about as much stuff I think that you need to do up front in order to get a job on site somewhere. You're not going to get paid a lot probably, because entry level, if you haven't really been doing this, your portfolio is probably not all that great in terms of rigged animation, but you can get a job. And then by way of doing that, on site somewhere or remotely working from home, either way, they'll give you things, and then you will have to perform these. You will have to animate these because you're going to have to meet quotas. I think all you need to do is you just need to get one little step closer to something. Just pick one of them. You want to learn rigging? Great. Learn rigging. But I think more importantly is I would pick a job that you think you can get that is using something that you don't yet know, and try to get that job. Go work there. It gives you a little bit of time to and it forces you to do it.
And you don't necessarily have to be an expert at all these programs. Like, if you know the common things, there's still stuff that I'm still learning with all the programs that I'm using now. Even Animate, there's still things I'm like, oh, I didn't know you could do that. And as
you animated for years in Flash without knowing how to nest symbols.
Oh yeah, everything was just on the what's the main thing?
Main timeline.
Yeah.
Well, also you could animate stuff inside a head, and then all you have to do is move that head around.
Yeah. God, and when it finally clicks, then that's when you're just like, oh, it's this burst of energy when you finally realize that it's not extremely complicated. And sometimes it is complicated, but when you learn it, sometimes you learn it and you forget it again, which is my case.
Yeah, the thing that he said was, the industry keeps moving, and sometimes it feels like Wile E. Coyote chasing the Roadrunner. And it can. I mean, yes, the industry is constantly moving, but it's also wildly stagnant. Yeah. There's plenty of jobs that they're just very, very old jobs that haven't really changed in 100 years. And illustration is kind of one of them. Illustration, it's pretty much the same idea as it always has been. The goals may be a little bit different. The construction might be different if you're part of that process. But in general, if you're talking about the end of the line, the final process of the closer you are to pre-production, the closer it is to that old process. That stuff really hasn't changed very much. But then when you're actually in production, and even if you want to call rigging part of pre-production, it kind of depends on where in your pipeline. Sure, the process that you take all of the illustrative stuff or all the ideas and all the story and everything, and you move that into whatever your final workflow is going to be, whatever your final medium is going to be, that's where the program becomes important. That's where that process becomes important. But even at the end of the line, when you're talking about animating, you're still using the same principles, the same ideas that you've always used for animating. It's just a different program, and you can find ways to use it, for yourself. But if you want to do animation specifically, sure, then you're in production. But if you want to be in different parts of the process, you can. You need to find out what is it that you like to do. And honestly, the best thing for you to do is just to find some work, and it'll just make you do it. Because if you're having difficulty motivating yourself, it's really difficult for you to learn something yourself to kick off that next part of your career. You could just kick off the next part of your career just by getting a job in that career, and then if you want to do it or not.
Yeah.
It's hard getting jobs. I'm not saying it's easy getting jobs, but in the meantime, just know what you want to do and start doing that. If you want to do illustration, start doing illustration. Just start it's more. There's two problems. One is the career path, and the other one is your personal motivation to continue working in animation. If you're losing love for working in animation just as an animator doing your own independent stuff, if you can't do your own independent stuff, then the only other option you have to keep you going is to get a job. Get a job and they'll make you do it. But if you don't like working in the industry and you don't like doing the job, then do the opposite. Do your own thing. But if you don't want to do a job and you don't want to do your own thing, you might need to take a break.
Yeah. And if you do your own thing, I find the things that helped me out was, volunteering in other people's projects. Sometimes I would do that. And then that's kind of a learning experience too, because you see how they operate stuff. And I made some mistakes and they were like, oh, you can't do it this way. And I kind of learned embarrassingly that you can't, but you have to kind of go through that kind of that stuff, that learning process, and always just be clear that you're not, an expert at this, but you have interest in it. And also, what helped me a lot was as far as like learning about other forms of animation was doing parody stuff. How can I make something look like that cartoon that I'm mimicking? And that kind of helps.
Totally. I'm actually doing that now. I'm actually doing that now. I'm exploring some different ways to do rigging things and putting hand drawn animation more efficiently into like rigged animation sets and stuff like that. And I'm actually going through a list and I'm trying to find a good example of a scene that I want to mimic. And I just want to like, okay, if I were to rig this and I were to animate it, how would I break this down? How would I break down this moment and how would I recreate it? It's a great thing to do. It's a little test, a little experiment for you.
Yeah.
Totally.
Hanna-Barbera, great example of like, I was like, oh, they did things the lazy way too. And that's why I did a lot of
UPA
parody. Oh yeah.
Yeah, UPA as well, yeah.
And also just promote yourself like you are your own company. If you're going down the independent route. And God, I think about it now, but I used to make cartoons and I would directly email Jerry Beck and I'd be like, hey, I got a cartoon if you want to talk about it on your Cartoon Brew. And it worked sometimes. It worked because he saw, I pitched him the Flintstones idea, the Flintstone parody. And he said, all right. and he posted. I'm not saying to contact Jerry Beck with your work, but sometimes like I don't know, there is like I think where you have to kind of fake it till you make it in a way, and I did that a lot. Where I was still when I post independent stuff, I'm extremely embarrassed by it, and I don't want anyone to talk to me about it. I just like here it is, goodbye. But
speaking of goodbye. You got 1 minute before you're supposed to get it at work, but let me say one thing. I'm going through your page right now, Sean Harvey, and I'm seeing some Let's Plays. I'm seeing some videos of you playing a game, and you're sitting there with your headset on and stuff like that. May I interest you in learning a little bit about character animator, designing a character, and then turning yourself into a cartoon character, and that cartoon character is the one that is displayed during the Let's Plays. That is exactly what character animator is like great. Most used for right now. And then you'll get a little bit into the rigging side of things. Probably not going to be super useful for you in the wider career. Not a lot of people use it, but it'll get you thinking about some separation of things. It's something that you already do, and then. From there, you could probably take that idea of when to separate the upper and the lower arm and stuff like that and apply that to things like Toon Boom rigging. There you go. There's my advice.
Definitely. I love getting people into character animator. I that's like my new thing now. It's like a cult leader who just goes around. But yeah, I have a friend who had no interest in animation. He used to do illustration stuff. He did almost like an animatic for something. I was like, oh, you should try animating this. I don't want to animate. And then I suggested he did character animator. He's better than me at it. The drawing creep guy. You saw his thing on TikTok. But yeah, try it. I would suggest that there is hope for learning new things, and I think
exactly.
An example.
And now we gotta go.
This morning I didn't even know how to put the volume on my thing, and I learned how to.
It's true. I think that I have said that every time that we've been on recently. Just go put the input in, or put the output to your headphones. Great talking to you as always. Hopefully this was helpful. Was trying to keep it specifically to just the thing that you were talking about, but just to recap, general interest in animation. Find the thing that you want to do. Surround yourself with people that like doing that thing, either in groups in person or on the internet. Yes, some programs are really complicated. Get a job in that particular program or pursuing that kind of thing, and you can like learn it on the job, or think of something that you can do independently that is already in line with something you already do, like the Let's Play, or you can figure out a bit of animation that you want to do, or something that you've already done before. Maybe you've already done a hand-drawn animation. Recreate one of your own scenes, but learn Toon Boom enough to recreate your own thing and see, like, you remember how it was doing hand-drawn animation. Maybe you might find that it's a lot easier doing rigged animation. There's a lot of ways to kind of kick yourself out of it. You just have to know if it's something that you want to do or if it's something that you feel like you have to do. Those are two very different things. And send us a message. It's fine. Yeah. Well, we can continue the conversation offline, as it were. But hopefully it helps, and hopefully it helps other people who are having the same kind of crossroads. It's not crazy. It's not normal. It's totally normal. Everyone has felt this way, and you just sometimes you just have to force yourself to do something in order to see if that's a thing that you actually want to do, instead of looking at it and going, I don't want to do this. It's just daunting to look at a mountain that you have to climb.
So hopefully this helped out your friend.
There you go, your friend.
You don't need any help with this stuff.
Right.
Like me, I have a friend who has a rash and doesn't know the best way to, or the best ointment for it. How can I? What should I for my friend do? It's making it very uncomfortable.
Not see me for 3 to 5 weeks until it heals.